Addy Soldiers, the other day on my way to work, I was scrolling through Twitter, as I want to do, and I found this tweet by John Green that is celebrating the fact that his hit best-selling novel, The Fault in Our Stars, came out 10 years ago. It was that moment in the morning on the train on my way to work that I finally understood that nostalgia is not only a concept, but a visceral feeling, and that I am now more aware of my creeping mortality than I ever have been. What do you mean TFIOS came out 10 years ago? What? The year is 2012. I was 17, I had some rockin' side bangs, I was just going into 12th grade. It was also the year that I got my first international modeling contract, so I was in New York, and I was actually in the middle of Hurricane Sandy. Our apartment building on Wall Street completely flooded, and that is a very wild story for another day. 2012 was also the year that the rover, the Curiosity, landed on Mars. There was a big solar eclipse that everyone was like losing their minds over, and the world was collectively losing their shit over the fact that the Mayans had predicted that this was gonna be the end year. And yet here we are, 10 years later. So this slightly disturbing realization over the fact that time is continual and will always be moving forwards, and the idea that I did this kind of video last year where I talked about books that I read 10 years ago when it was 2011, I wanted to do one for 2012 as well, because 2012 was the year that YA exploded. 2006 gave us Twilight, which was arguably the beginning. From that, we had a lot of other vampire, werewolf, paranormal books for the next couple of years leading after that. And then when we got into 2011, 2012, 2013, that's when things got really big in the dystopians and the fantasies. I will leave the Goodreads list that I am pulling from in the description below. It's a wild time looking through all of that. But a lot of books on that list are some leftover vampire, werewolf, paranormal books from the Twilight craze. There's a lot of soulmate stuff, usually with the aforementioned vampires or werewolves. A surprising amount of fallen angel or demon-y books, and every single one had a variation of a red, black, and white cover. There was also a lot of sequels. Like a lot. Mostly for books that were in series that had 4, 5, 6, 7 books in them. I'm not gonna talk about a lot of those because A, I would have already talked about some of the first books of that series in my 2011 video, and also I didn't end up reading a lot of them, so I don't really have an opinion on them. I do have a couple of sequels that I will talk about, so don't you worry. Without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's go over some of my favorite books that I read 10 years ago in 2012. I mean, let's just start off with the guest of honor. Let's talk about The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Ah yes, the Shakespearean tragedy between Hazel Grace Lancaster and our love interest, Gus, last name. TFIOS follows our main character Hazel as she struggles with cancer, and she meets another cancer survivor in a support group, and they fall in love, while she is also really obsessed with an author who wrote a book that does not have a concrete ending, and so the whole story is kind of like learning to let go of that and write your own ending. This might have been one of the first YA contemporary novels to really hit it big, especially because 2012 was peak Tumblr years, and oh boy did we sure love to romanticize depression. I would highly recommend watching Lindsay Ellis's video on the death of the author because she interviews John Green in regards to The Fault in Our Stars, and I think the both of them have some really insightful things to say over the author-reader relationship and what is owed to each party, and you will run out right away to go and watch the movie. And I didn't do that. I have never watched the adaptation of The Fault in Our Stars, not because I didn't want to. I think it looked really good. It's just that I have a very fragile mental state as it is, and I have never felt the need to devastate myself that badly. All right, next up is a Cassandra Clare novel, because again, late 2000s, early 2010s is when she, the Mortal Instruments was starting. It was starting big. People were getting really excited about it. So in 2012, she put out the 5th of the Mortal Instruments series, which was The City of Lost Souls. The book before this that came out in 2011, which was The City of Fallen Angels. The 4th book I did not like. That kind of made me fall out of love with her writing, but City of Lost Souls is one of my favorite books that she's ever written, so this one made me fall back in love with her. This is the book where Sebastian and Jace have a little cottagecore interlude where they both like live in this little interdimensional house on like the banks of some river in France, and then like Clary has to go break a curse. Oh, Jace is under a curse through all of this, by the way. I enjoyed her world building in this a lot more than in the previous ones because we get more fairy stuff. We get to see the Iron Sisters. Oh, this is also the book that inspired this tattoo. Not the snake one, the one above it. So this is a quote from Virgil's Aeneid, and Sebastian says it, and this is Latin for, "If I cannot bring down heaven, then I will raise hell." Sebastian is one dramatic bitch, and like, I loved him till the end, truly. Speaking of sequels, 2012 was also the year that gave us Insurgent by Veronica Roth. The Divergent series, how did you go so wrong? Divergent, solid book. Insurgent, I literally don't remember anything that happened in this. Oh, Triss got like, didn't she cut her hair off? Didn't she have like a little mental breakdown and cut her hair off? It's okay, girl, it happens to us all. Why do you think I got a pixie cut a couple years ago? There was a Rebel City. I'm trying to remember what the movie told me, but like, I got rid of these books like 2 years ago, so I remember nothing. Were serums, and oh, she was the chosen one that was supposed to like open a box or something. Wait, was that even in the book? I'm literally going on like Wikipedia pages because I don't remember what this book is about. Okay, it's just a lot of people in different facilities who are like backstabbing each other. I don't know how accurate that Wikipedia is, but it's probably more accurate to what I remember in here. So this book was all right, I guess. All right, the time has come. We are going to talk about one of my generation's cultural resets that I didn't realize was such a big deal until I joined Booktok. 2012 gave us the first book in one of the most popular to-date YA fantasy series, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Remember when we didn't know how shitty Sarah J. Maas was and this was the pinnacle of girl boss YA novels? Man, it has been a decade. This is the first of a 7-book series following Selena Sardathian, an assassin who has adventures for 7 whole books. And we got a love triangle, then there's some fairy lore and some demon stuff, and there's a lot of fighting and like, you know, girl power. I know even at the time they were coming out, there were some questionable things, and we all know the drama of the 2nd book and the like 5th book, and then like all of ACOTAR is weird, and the Crescent City has its issues. I will give her credit. Something that I really liked about her series, which is something that I know drove a lot of people away, is that in every book she just kept expanding her world, and I thought that was really well done, and I really enjoyed that because we got to fully like look into this world building and really develop certain characters and certain places. Like, this series started off as a assassin Cinderella retelling, which turned into this magical war series that had fairies and demons and dragons and other deep magic and big spiders and like shapeshifters and flying people who fly on birds. Were they crow riders? I can't quite remember. Oh, and like lost gods from other dimensions. Like, it got weird. I also stopped supporting Sarah J. Maas a little while ago. I've kept all the books that I have bought from her, mostly because I feel conflicted about what to do about them. So currently they just sit on like the bottom of my bookcase, so we just don't give her attention, you know? However, I felt like I was missing a giant milestone in my own reading if I didn't mention this book in today's videos. Okay, now, see, I keep wanting to say, oh, another OG YA book, but like, that's true. This was the year that set the building blocks for like literally everything on my shelves right now. Something else that ended up being like a really big thing for me that came out in 2012 was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. She was fresh off of the success of the Shiver werewolf series, which I never read, and I didn't even read Raven Boys until like 2015. I left my boys and Blue alone for so long, and you know what? I actually think that was a good decision. I first tried to read this when I was a younger teen, and I didn't like it. I thought it was super weird. And then I think when The Raven King came out, I decided to just give it another shot because it was a full series and it was pretty and I wanted it, and I worked at the bookstore and I had a great discount. What was I supposed to do? Leave it there on the shelf? No. So I picked it up and I fell head over heels into this beautiful magic realism book about Welsh kings and folklore and ley lines, and like the most beautiful chef's kiss character development, relationship building book that I maybe have ever read. We follow our rich pretty boy Gansey, our dusty Adam, our vicious Ronan, and soft-spoken Noah as they go after a Welsh king who is said to grant a favor to whoever wakes him, and they end up pulling Psychic's daughter Blue into their court as they attempt to like unwield the secrets of the ley line. Something about the way that she writes about dreams and reality and love and relationships between people, it just cracks open something inside my deep, dark, black, dead heart, and it makes me feel things. I re-listen to the audiobooks of this every single year, and every single year I sob like a child at the end of Raven King, because they are all just, they're so great.
Editing Rachel here to tell you that past Rachel completely forgot to mention that I love the Raven Boys so much I have 3 Raven Boys tattoos, technically 4 if you count the name of my jackalope on my leg. I love this series so much that I have immortalized it on my skin in ink more than once, and I can't think of a way to give a more glowing recommendation.
Oh my god, I forgot that I even still had this one. Another very popular book that came out in 2012 was The Selection by Kira Cass. The romantic dystopian featured one of the only redhead protagonists at the time, and I did not want to attach my personality to her, let me tell you. America is a whiny ass bitch, and I did not like her then, and I do not like her now. Why do I still own this book? I don't know. Maybe at some point I told myself I was gonna make a drinking game out of it, and then never did. Is this what we thought ACOTAR was in 2012? The Selection stars America Singer as one of the 35 girls chosen out of different classes to be able to win the heart of the prince and then like rule by his side. We're all in like case systems. It was very 2012 dystopian. So it was like The Bachelor in the future, but worse. I remember this specifically being the like trashy YA book that everyone was digging into because it was short, it was fast, it was like utterly ridiculous, but it was supposed to be like very romantic. I read all 3 of the Selection books, and honestly I feel like I shaved 45 minutes off of my life in every book that I finished. Also a love triangle was a must-have back in the day, and you know what? I will say, Maxon is actually one of my favorite male love interests. He was actually like a pretty sweet, chill guy until the 3rd one, when he started making questionable decisions because the author needed him to. That's not character development. Even though I like Maxon way more than I liked Aspen, I'm really glad that we have more YA love interests to choose from who have more personality, because I don't have time for insecure men, and truly baby, neither do you. And before I get to the final one of this episode of A Model Who's Read, I want to give some honorable mentions to books that I still happen to own that are actually from 2012. So the first of which was Cinder by Marissa Mayer, the first of her Lunar Chronicles, which was a series of books that all followed sci-fi retellings of fairy tales that all had a through plot line. So it was like, you know, they're taking down the empire, but also there's like magical sci-fi werewolves and like genetically engineered sleeping diseases, and like it was a wild time. Oh, Cyborg Cinderella was very fun though. I credit this as awakening my love for sassy AIs. Also not a bad love interest for the era. Kai was pretty great. And a sequel that I still happen to have my original copy from 2012 is one that I mentioned in my 2011 video, which was Daughter of Smoke and Bone. The sequel, Days of Blood and Starlight, I think still holds up pretty well. Haru and Akiva are still some of my favorite like monstery angel type of beings, and to this day I love Laini Taylor. I think her writing is just so beautiful, and she can do no wrong. And it would not be there if I didn't mention The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. Man, Alex Bracken, you have come so far since writing this real weird dystopian book. I don't know what was happening here. I also did not see this movie, and I don't remember this book well enough to distinguish between the two, so I'm like, again, like factions of some kind, because that was like the thing to do in the 2012s. 2012, like it was multiple years. 2010 to like 2015 is just all 2012 to me in my mind. Factions by color, and I think the color was like the kind or the severity of magic you had. I never read the rest of the series because I didn't really like the first book very much, but her latest book, which was out last January, Lore, which is this like amazing Greek god book, was one of my favorites of 2021. So she has come a long way, and I respect that. Okay, last on this list is one I had no idea came out in 2012. Which truly just goes to show how terrible my memory is. But finally, I can say that this OG series, it's getting its full due 10 years later, because in 2012 we were introduced to Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and it was the first entrance of The Darkling and Alina Starkov and Stormhund and everybody else that we love today. I am yelling so loud, I'm surprised my neighbors haven't come up to see what the hell I'm talking about. I read this last year before the TV show came out to refresh my memory, and like it's definitely a debut novel, and it's definitely a 2012 kind of book, but I love this world, I love this concept. I'm really enjoying her characters, and especially the spin-off of... Am I okay? Six of Crows, wow. I've been saying too many titles. I don't know where I am anymore. The TV show really did this book justice, and it's so cool to see this magic on a screen, and the effects that they use was so amazing. I'm so glad a new group of people are able to find this and read it and love it just like I did 10 years ago, and it's so amazing to see like how this older book has been able to, first of all, make a resurgence, but second of all, bring so many people together, which is something that's harder to do with older books because maybe the content doesn't age very well, or it's part of a trend that died a couple years ago, and even though you really love it, it might be hard to like get new people engaged. But this Russian-inspired fantasy novel about bending magic and light and shadow makers has been a YA staple for the last decade, and now has just like exploded in popularity, and it's such a good one to do that with, and I can't wait to see what Lee's gonna do with this series, with this world, and then also what media is going to do with this series and this world. When I'm filming this, they just released the character cast for the second season of Shadow and Bone, and I'm so excited! We're gonna see Wylan, and we're gonna see Nikolai, and I'm just, okay, can't freak out about that yet. I will save that for when the season comes out and I can just binge it all at once, because I'm gonna get too excited, and I'm already very sweaty. And with that, that concludes my list of books I read 10 years ago in 2012. Oh no! Books I read 10 years ago in 2012. Alright, then again, I don't think the last 3 years should have counted, so I guess I am more accurate if you think about it that way. Please leave down below what books you yourself read 10 years ago in 2012. I think at this time I had just started to read like adult novels, but I was still very much so in the middle grade and YA books. Looking back at my reading habits and like how I read, what I was reading, how the industry has grown in the last 10 years, I'm very excited to see what the next decade is going to hold. Even now, in the last couple of years, it's already been a huge step up in like diversity, the types of love stories we get, lots more queer books, a wider range of sci-fi novels, a lot more like super high fantasy series. Over the last year or two, there's been a huge resurgence in romance novels I don't think anybody was anticipating. I was planning for a little bit of a longer outro, but my voice has decided otherwise, so we're gonna wrap this up real quick. You know where to click to like the video, you know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!